The Hall of Judgment was built of black stone and silver beams. Long banners of the council's crest hung from the walls, swaying gently from the air vents above. Hundreds of eyes watched from the tiers of seats that circled the chamber. Some belonged to alien leaders who wore ceremonial robes, while others were common citizens allowed to witness the ruling. At the center stood a raised platform, brightly lit, where the accused waited in chains. The accused was an alien woman named Lyra. Her skin held a faint shimmer of silver, and her long dark hair had been tied back with a coarse rope. Even though heavy cuffs bound her wrists, she stood tall, her chin raised, her posture calm. She showed no fear as the council read her crimes. They accused her of betrayal. They accused her of helping humans during the last conflict. And for that, they had chosen death as her sentence. Among those who stood in the shadows of the hall was a young human medic named Daniel. He wore the white coat of the Healers Guild, marked with the red circle that showed he was sworn to save lives. His job was not to judge, nor to argue. His role was to examine prisoners before their execution, ensuring they were physically fit to face their punishment. He had done this duty before, though he never grew used to it. It weighed heavily on his heart each time. When Daniel's turn came, a guard led him across the wide floor toward Lyra. The crowd grew quiet, watching the lone human approach the alien prisoner. He felt the pressure of so many eyes on him, but he kept walking. He reached her side and looked at her closely. Her eyes, a pale violet, met his without hesitation. "Name," Daniel said softly, holding his medical tablet. "Lyra," she answered in a voice that was calm and steady. He nodded and placed the scanner on her wrist. The device glowed faintly, showing her heartbeat and body condition. Everything about her was healthy. She was strong, though her muscles showed signs of strain from being held in chains. His duty was to mark her as fit for the sentence. But as he looked at her, something unsettled him. There was no malice in her gaze, no hatred, only quiet strength. The head counselor, an elder with a face like weathered stone, spoke to the crowd. "This one aided humans during the conflict. She gave them food, safe passage, and knowledge of our borders. Such betrayal cannot be forgiven. The sentence is death, to be carried out at dawn tomorrow." The hall echoed with agreement from the counselors seated high above. Some in the crowd cheered. Others stayed silent. Daniel felt his chest tighten. He wanted to speak, but he knew the rules. Medics were not to interfere with the council's decisions. They were servants of life, not politics. Still, when he leaned closer to check Lyra's pulse, he whispered so only she could hear. "Why did you help humans?" Her eyes flickered, surprised by his question. She looked at him with quiet honesty. "Because I saw what your people carried inside them. Hope. Strength. My leaders use fear to rule, but I believed humans could bring balance. That was why I helped. For that, they call me traitor." Daniel's hand paused on her wrist. He had heard many accused prisoners before, some pleading, some shouting, some weeping. Lyra did none of those things. Her words carried no desperation. She spoke as if she had already accepted her fate, yet still wanted the truth to be known. He pulled his hand back and marked his tablet. His voice stayed steady when he addressed the council. "The prisoner is healthy. She is fit for the sentence." The elder counselor nodded with approval. "Good. Then at dawn she will be executed, and all will see the price of treachery." The guards pulled Lyra back toward her holding chamber. Daniel stood there for a moment longer, feeling the weight of her words pressing into his thoughts. He turned and walked away, but his steps were slower than before. That night, as he sat alone in the medic's quarters, Daniel could not find peace. He stared at the ceiling, hearing her voice again in his memory. She had not begged him. She had not tried to sway him with tears. She had spoken of belief, of trust in humans, even when her own people turned against her. Daniel rubbed his hands together and whispered to himself. She helped us. She believed in us. And now they will kill her for it? His heart wrestled with his duty. He was a medic, bound to save life where he could. Yet if he stepped beyond his role, the council would see him as a traitor as well. He thought of his oath, the words he spoke when he joined the Healers Guild: life is sacred, no matter where it is found. Those words burned in his chest now. When he finally closed his eyes, he saw Lyra's face again. Calm, unafraid, but filled with quiet truth. He knew sleep would not come. His choice would have to be made soon. By dawn, she would be gone forever. Outside, the city glowed with the pale lights of the alien towers. Patrol ships moved across the sky, casting long shadows on the streets below. Within the council chambers, guards prepared for the public execution. Chains were checked, weapons were polished, and the platform was set. Everything was ready. But in the medic's quarters, Daniel's hands trembled as he reached for his access card. His duty was clear, but his heart was louder. He knew he could not stand by. He knew he could not let her die. The night stretched on, and the decision weighed heavy. By the time the first faint light touched the horizon, Daniel had already chosen. The morning sky above the city was pale and cold. Towers of glass and stone reached high into the clouds, their windows shining faintly in the light of dawn. From every street, citizens moved toward the grand square, where the execution was planned. The council wanted all to see what became of those who defied them. Inside the prison chamber, Lyra sat on the narrow bench, her hands still bound with metal cuffs. A single shaft of light came through a high window, touching the floor near her feet. She stared at it quietly, her face calm, her thoughts steady. She had known this day would come from the moment she helped humans escape. She had not done it for reward. She had done it because she believed in something greater than fear. Outside the chamber, Daniel walked with measured steps, his medic's coat clean and pressed, his access card held firmly in his hand. Two guards escorted him down the hall, their boots striking hard against the metal floor. One of them glanced at him and said, "The prisoner is ready. You will confirm her health before the sentence." Daniel nodded but said nothing. His throat felt tight, but he kept his face blank. He had practiced this expression many times. A medic who showed too much emotion risked losing respect. But inside, his mind churned. He knew what was about to happen, and he knew he could not allow it. Still, he had no clear plan. He only had his oath, and his heart telling him what was right. When the guards opened the chamber door, Daniel stepped inside. The heavy door closed behind him, leaving only the dim light and the silence between him and Lyra. She looked up at him as he entered. Her violet eyes held no fear. "They send you again," she said softly. Daniel approached slowly. He held his tablet but did not raise it right away. "I am here to check your condition," he said in the formal tone he was expected to use. Then, after a pause, his voice dropped lower. "But I need to know. Do you regret what you did?" Lyra tilted her head, studying him. "No," she said. "If I had another chance, I would do the same. I will not regret helping those who showed kindness when my own rulers showed only cruelty. Humans may be young among the stars, but I have seen something in them my people fear. They fear it because it cannot be controlled." Daniel swallowed hard. "What do they fear?" She leaned closer, her voice barely above a whisper. "They fear that humans do not bow. That even when broken, they rise again. They fear your spirit, Daniel. That is why they will not let me live. I chose to believe in that spirit. Now I pay the price." Her words struck deep in him. For a moment, Daniel stood still, fighting the weight pressing on his chest. His duty told him to mark her fit and leave. His oath told him life was sacred. His heart told him he could not let her die. He bent slightly, pretending to scan her wrist with the tablet. The small light glowed on her skin, but his voice was low when he spoke again. "If I help you escape, do you trust me?" Her eyes widened slightly, though her calm did not break. "You would risk your life for me?" Daniel's hand shook as he pulled the scanner away. "I would risk it because letting them take yours is against everything I believe. But you must tell me the truth. If I save you, will you use your freedom to harm?" Lyra shook her head. "No, I seek no blood. I only want to live and prove them wrong." The chamber door rattled as one of the guards outside knocked. "Medic, time is short. Confirm her status." Daniel straightened, forcing his voice to remain steady. "The prisoner is fit," he called out. He tapped the tablet to save the record, but inside his decision was already made. He would not let her be taken to the square. He would not let her die for an act of mercy. The choice burned inside him like fire, but he felt strangely calm. When the door opened again, the guards stepped in. Daniel gave a small bow of respect and walked out with them, leaving Lyra behind. But as he returned to his quarters, he began to plan. The city was alive with noise as the crowds filled the streets. Merchants sold food from carts. Children perched on the shoulders of parents, eager to see the spectacle. The council wanted the people to remember this day as a warning. Daniel looked at them all and felt his anger rise. They did not see what he saw. They did not see a woman of courage, willing to stand against fear. They saw only what they were told to see. Back in his quarters, Daniel opened his medical bag. He pulled out a vial of sedative, strong enough to put a guard to sleep for hours. He slipped it into his pocket. Next, he checked his access card, making sure it still carried his clearance for restricted areas. Finally, he wrapped a plain cloak around his coat. It would not disguise him fully, but it might hide his guild mark long enough. He sat on the edge of his bed, breathing deeply. He knew the risks. If he was caught, he would be branded a traitor. He might face the same fate as Lyra. Yet his heart was steady now. He remembered her words. She did not regret her choice, and neither would he. The horns of the city sounded in the distance, announcing the approach of dawn. The execution was only an hour away. Daniel rose to his feet, his resolve firm. He would not stay silent. He would not turn his back. As he left his quarters and walked into the brightening streets, the path ahead seemed heavy with danger. Yet deep inside, Daniel felt something stronger than fear. He felt purpose. He whispered to himself, "Life is sacred. I will save her." The square was already crowded when the sun's first rays touched the high towers. Citizens filled the stone steps and wooden platforms, their voices a steady murmur of expectation. The council wanted the execution to be public, a show of power to remind everyone that betrayal would not be tolerated. Inside the prison halls, guards prepared to lead Lyra out. They tightened the chains on her wrists and placed a collar around her neck, a collar that shimmered faintly with energy. It was a device meant to weaken her, to stop any attempt of resistance. Lyra remained silent. She did not struggle. She walked as if each step was already part of her path. In another wing of the prison, Daniel moved with purpose. His medic's badge gave him entry to most restricted areas, and no one questioned him when he walked past. He carried his medical bag over his shoulder, but inside were not just tools of healing. He had packed bandages, a small blade for cutting bindings, and the vial of sedative he had prepared earlier. He knew he had only one chance. Once the guards began the march to the square, the prisoner would be surrounded by soldiers and watched by hundreds of eyes. If he wanted to act, it had to be before they reached the public stage. Daniel reached the inner gate where two guards stood. They crossed their weapons in front of him. One of them spoke in a firm voice. "Only council staff beyond this point." Daniel lifted his bag. The council requested a final medical check before the transfer. Orders are clear. The prisoner must be fit for the walk to the square. The guards looked at each other. One frowned. She was checked yesterday. Daniel forced a calm smile. Yes, but the council does not wish her to collapse on the stage. That would weaken their display. I will be quick. The guards hesitated. Finally, one waved him through. Make it fast, human. Daniel's heart raced, but he kept his pace steady as he entered the chamber. Inside, he found Lyra standing between two guards, her wrists chained, the collar glowing faintly at her neck. She lifted her head when she saw him. For the first time, her calm expression flickered, a trace of surprise in her eyes. Daniel stepped closer, lowering his voice. It has to be now. One of the guards moved as if to block him. No closer. Check her from there. Daniel gave a polite nod, then opened his bag. He pulled out a small injector, a normal tool for sedatives. He filled it quietly from the vial hidden in his palm. He approached the first guard, pretending to adjust his arm. You are tense, Daniel said. If you grip her too tightly, her pulse will be irregular. Let me check. The guard frowned, confused by the suggestion, but before he could argue, Daniel pressed the injector against his arm and released the dose. The guard's body stiffened, then slumped to the floor, unconscious. The second guard reached for his weapon, but Daniel swung the bag with force, striking him across the head. The guard stumbled, dazed. Lyra lifted her bound hands and pushed against him, sending him crashing into the wall. The chamber fell silent again except for Daniel's heavy breathing. He dropped to one knee and pulled the small blade from his bag. Hold still, he whispered. The chains clattered as he cut through them. Sparks flew as the cuff snapped open. He worked quickly at the collar, sliding the blade into the clasp until it released with a click. Lyra rubbed her wrists, staring at him with disbelief. You risk everything, she said. Daniel gave a short nod. I cannot let them kill you. Come with me. They hurried toward the side door that led into the supply tunnels. Daniel had memorized the maps during his nights of study. These tunnels carried food and water into the prison, and few guards bothered to patrol them. The corridors were narrow and dim, lit only by old lamps that buzzed faintly. Dust clung to the walls. Their footsteps echoed as they ran. Every sound made Daniel's heart pound, but they pressed forward. Lyra glanced at him as they moved. You should not be here. They will brand you a traitor. I know, Daniel answered. But my oath is to save lives. If I abandon you, I abandon myself. For the first time since he had met her, Lyra's calm broke into a faint smile. It was small, fleeting, but filled with gratitude. The tunnel opened into a storage chamber where crates of supplies were stacked high. Daniel paused to catch his breath. He checked the scanner on his wrist, making sure no patrol signals were close. The device showed a brief flicker of movement at the far end, then went still. We must move quickly, he said. Once they find the guards in the chamber, they will sound the alarm. Lyra rested one hand on a crate, her eyes distant. You do not know what they will do to you when they catch us. Daniel met her gaze. Then we must not let them catch us. They moved again, following the tunnel until it sloped upward. The air grew cooler, and soon they saw a faint light ahead. It was the lower edge of the city, where the supply routes connected to the outer streets. If they could reach the shadows beyond the wall, they might escape into the open desert. But as they reached the final door, a loud alarm rang through the tunnels. The sound was sharp, echoing through every corridor. Red lights flashed against the stone walls. The council had discovered the escape. Run, Daniel said. They pushed through the door and stepped into the sunlight. Behind them, the alarm bells clanged, and shouts filled the air. Lyra turned her face to the sky, breathing deeply as if tasting freedom again. Daniel grabbed her hand. This way. They darted into the narrow alleys between the lower towers. Merchants cried out in surprise as the pair rushed past, their cloaks billowing. Citizens turned to stare. Some pointed. Some whispered. Others backed away, afraid of being caught near fugitives. Daniel's heart pounded. The choice had been made, and there was no turning back. He was no longer just a medic of the guild. He was now a traitor in the eyes of the council. But as he looked at Lyra, running beside him with fierce determination, he knew he had chosen rightly. For the first time since dawn, Daniel felt alive. He had broken the law, but he had saved a life. The path ahead was dangerous, but together they would face it. The alarm bells did not stop. They rang across the city like a storm that refused to fade. Their sound rolled through the wide streets and narrow alleys, bouncing from tower to tower. People who had filled the square for the execution now turned their heads toward the noise. Whispers spread quickly. The prisoner had escaped. Daniel pulled Lyra into the shadow of a broken wall. His breath came fast, but his hands stayed steady as he checked the scanner on his wrist. The device flashed red again and again. Patrols were already moving. The council had released hunters and drones to track them down. They will search every street, Daniel said quietly. We must stay away from open ground. Lyra nodded. She lifted her eyes toward the towers above, watching the dark shapes of patrol ships moving across the sky. Their engines hummed like angry insects. Small drones broke away, scanning the rooftops and alleys below. This city is a cage, she said. They will not let us walk free. Then we will not walk, Daniel answered. We will hide, we will move, and we will outlast them. They slipped deeper into the alley, stepping over broken stone and rusted metal pipes. The streets here were older, forgotten by the council. Walls were cracked, and windows boarded. No merchants sold their goods here, no banners waved. Only silence and the faint smell of dust lingered. Lyra kept her head high, but Daniel could see the weight of the collar marks still on her neck, a faint burn left behind by the energy field. He reached into his bag and pulled out a strip of cloth. Here. Cover this. She took it and wrapped it carefully around her throat. Her violet eyes met his for a moment. Why do you help me so much? You could have left me in chains. It would have been safer. Daniel did not slow his steps. I am a medic. My oath is to save life, not to watch it taken. If I left you, I would have broken that oath. For a moment, silence passed between them, broken only by the echo of the alarm. Then Lyra said softly, Your kind is strange. My leaders told us humans cared only for themselves. Yet here you are, risking all for me. They fear us, Daniel said. That is why they lie. They reached the end of the alley, where the path opened onto a small square. Daniel stopped suddenly and pulled Lyra back. A drone hovered above the square, its lens scanning the ground. Its red light swept slowly from side to side. Daniel whispered, If it sees us, the hunters will come. He reached into his bag and pulled out a small reflective shield, a tool used by medics to sterilize wounds with light. He angled it carefully, catching the sunlight that slipped between the towers. The reflection struck the drone's lens, confusing its sensors. The machine spun in circles, its red light flashing wildly. With a final burst of sparks, it crashed into the side of a wall and fell. Lyra raised her brows. You fight with healing tools. Daniel gave a faint smile. It is all I have. They crossed the square quickly before more drones could arrive. Their steps took them into a maze of service tunnels beneath the city. The tunnels were damp and smelled of rust, but they offered shelter from the searching eyes above. Water dripped from pipes. Rats scurried into the shadows. As they walked, Lyra spoke again. Do you know why the council fears your kind so much? Daniel shook his head. They say we are dangerous. But I do not know why. Lyra's voice was low, almost like a secret. It is not your weapons they fear. It is your will. My people, the council, they rule by fear. If one obeys, all obey. But humans are different. Even when beaten, even when broken, you rise again. That cannot be controlled. That is why they call you dangerous. Daniel thought of her words as they moved deeper underground. He had seen suffering in his work as a medic. He had seen humans lose much, yet still stand up the next day. He had never thought of it as something feared by others, but now he understood. At last, the tunnel ended at a rusted door that opened into the canyon beyond the city walls. The sky above was white and blue, the desert stretching far in every direction. Jagged rocks cast long shadows in the rising sun. For a brief moment, Daniel felt relief. They had escaped the walls. But the sound of engines broke the silence. From above, a patrol ship swept across the canyon, its searchlights cutting through the dust. Behind it, smaller hunter craft followed like wolves on the trail. They have found us, Daniel said. Lyra looked toward the canyon's edge, her face calm once more. Then we must move where their machines cannot follow. They began to climb the rocks, their hands scraping against the rough stone. The engines roared closer, the searchlights sweeping past. Drones darted through the air, their sensors buzzing. One spotted them and fired a flare. The light shot into the sky, marking their location. Daniel's heart raced. He grabbed Lyra's hand and pulled her into a narrow crack between the rocks. The space was tight, the stone pressing against their backs, but it hid them from sight. The patrol ship passed overhead, its light missing them by only a few feet. When the noise faded, Daniel let out a long breath. They will not stop. They will follow us until we are caught. Lyra's voice was steady. Then we must show them that humans cannot be caught so easily. For the first time, Daniel saw not just calm in her eyes but also strength. She was no longer the prisoner waiting for death. She was something more. The hunt was far from over. The council would not rest until they were taken. But in that moment, pressed against the stone with the desert wind rushing past, Daniel felt something he had not felt since the chase began. He felt hope. The chamber of the Galactic Council was a place of silence and order. Great walls of silver metal rose high above the floor, where a round table floated in the center. Around it sat beings from many worlds, each dressed in the colors of their people. Their voices were calm, but their eyes carried heavy judgment. On this day the council had gathered to make a choice about the alien woman named Lyra. Her case had spread across the systems. Whispers ran through trade ships, across colonies, and through the stars. Some said she was dangerous. Some said she was innocent. But most of all, people spoke about the human medic who had broken rules to protect her. Daniel walked into the chamber with steady steps. His uniform was simple, showing that he was only a medic and not a soldier or leader. Still, his presence drew every gaze. Beside him walked Lyra, dressed in plain cloth, her head held high even though her future was unclear. The council leader, a tall figure with skin like polished stone, raised his hand. "Daniel of Earth," he said. "You know why you stand here. You saved a prisoner who was marked for death. Speak. Tell us why." Daniel looked around the room. He saw eyes filled with distrust, but also some with curiosity. He took a breath and spoke in a clear voice. "I saved her because I am a medic. My duty is to heal life, not to end it. She was not treated as a person but as a symbol of fear. That was not justice. That was punishment without truth." A murmur moved through the chamber. Some council members shook their heads. Others leaned forward. Lyra stayed quiet, her hands folded in front of her. She let Daniel's words carry the weight. One council member, a being with long silver hair and eyes like water, asked, And what of her crimes? The record shows she belonged to a group that planned attacks on colonies. Daniel stood firm. I do not deny records, but I ask this, have you listened to her voice? Have you asked her story? Or have you judged her only because of fear? If we do not seek truth, then what do our laws mean? The chamber grew silent again. The question hung heavy in the air. At last, the council leader turned his gaze to Solara. Speak, daughter of your people. Tell us why your life should be spared. Solara lifted her head. Her voice was soft but strong. I was never part of the group you call rebels. My family lived in a valley where no ships landed, where no armies fought. When soldiers came, they called us enemies because we refused to give them food. They burned our homes. They said my name was on a list, but I had never even left my village. I was taken only because I did not bow. Her words carried pain, but no anger. The chamber listened in silence. Some eyes softened, others grew colder. Daniel watched the faces and knew that some minds would not change. But he also saw seeds of doubt growing. That was enough for now. The council leader raised his hand again. We will not decide today. This matter is greater than one life. It touches the bond between humans and other worlds. We must speak more before a final judgment. Daniel felt both relief and worry. Solara's life was safe for now, but the decision was not yet made. After the session ended, Daniel and Solara left the chamber together. The halls outside were filled with watchers, reporters, diplomats, and curious citizens. They whispered as the pair walked past. Some looked with hate, others with hope. Solara spoke softly as they walked. You risk much for me. Even your own people may turn against you. Daniel gave a small smile. If I lose my place for saving a life, then I did what was right. My oath as a medic matters more than ranks or orders. That night, they stayed in a safe place given by a small group of supporters. Solara sat by the window, looking at the stars. Your people, she said, they are strange. Some fear me, some want me gone, yet you stood in front of them without fear. Daniel joined her at the window. Humans are divided, like many others. But when one person chooses to do what is right, others can follow. Maybe that is what scares them. That one voice can change many. Solara looked at him with quiet eyes. Then your voice may change more than just my fate. It may change the way worlds see each other. For the first time since her capture, she allowed herself a small smile. It was faint, almost hidden, but Daniel noticed it. It gave him strength. The next day the council called for more witnesses. Soldiers who had guarded Solara were brought forward. Some claimed she was defiant, refusing orders. Others admitted she had never raised a hand against anyone. The truth seemed to twist between words. Daniel watched, feeling the weight of every answer. He knew that facts could be shaped, but hearts were harder to bend. At one point, a human officer stepped forward to speak against Daniel. He broke our law, the officer said firmly. If he is not punished, others will follow his path. We cannot allow chaos. Daniel stood and replied with calm strength. If saving lives is chaos, then we must ask ourselves what kind of order we are keeping. Again the chamber murmured. Again the seeds of doubt grew. By the end of the second day, the council had not decided. But Daniel and Solara knew one thing. The more they spoke, the more the truth reached ears that had once been closed. That night, Solara looked at Daniel and said, no matter what they decide, you have given me something greater than freedom. You gave me a voice when no one else listened. Daniel shook his head. It is not only me. You spoke with strength. I only gave you the chance. Outside, the stars burned quietly. The council would soon reach its final choice. But Daniel knew that no matter the outcome, something had already changed. humanity had shown that one person's courage could light a path in the dark. The desert wind whipped across the canyon, carrying the dry scent of stone and sand. Daniel and Solara crouched behind a cluster of jagged rocks, listening to the hum of patrol ships above. Their engines cut through the quiet like sharp blades. Every second brought the risk of discovery. Daniel wiped sweat from his brow, though the morning air was cool. "They will not stop searching for us," he said quietly. "The council wants to make an example. We have to be ready." Solara nodded, her violet eyes scanning the horizon. "I have been ready," she said. "But this place is strong. We can use it. The machines above cannot follow into the rocks and narrow passages. We have the advantage if we act carefully." They moved slowly through the canyon, stepping over rocks and ducking behind natural walls. Daniel carried the medkit, not just for healing but also for small tools that might help them navigate the rough terrain. Solara's steps were sure, though her wrists still bore faint marks from the collars and chains. As they climbed higher into the canyon, they saw the patrol ships below. Drones hovered near the canyon mouth, their sensors scanning for movement. One of the drones spotted a shadow and fired a flare into the air. Its light shone brightly for a few seconds, marking their location. Daniel's heart beat fast, but he did not panic. "Move," he whispered, grabbing Solara's hand. They ran along a narrow ledge, pressed close to the canyon wall. The flare passed them, and the drones continued scanning the lower ground. For now, they were safe. Solara looked at him with a faint smile. "You do not hesitate," she said. Daniel shook his head. "Fear does not help. Only careful action helps." The canyon opened into a larger plateau. From there, they could see the edge of the desert stretching for miles. Daniel knew the council's patrols would not be able to follow easily, but he also knew they could not rest. They had to keep moving, stay ahead. Suddenly, a patrol ship appeared over the ridge, its searchlight sweeping across the rocks. Daniel pulled Solara down behind a boulder. They stayed still, holding their breath. The light passed them, missing by inches. "We have to find a better place," Daniel said. "We need cover and a way to defend ourselves if they come too close." Solara nodded. "There is an old outpost further along. It was abandoned years ago. I have been there once. Few patrols know of it. We can reach it before they catch up." They ran carefully, avoiding open ground as much as possible. The wind carried their footsteps away. The desert plateau was quiet except for the hum of distant engines. As they approached the outpost, Solara paused. "Here," she whispered. "This is it." The outpost was small, built of stone and metal, half buried in sand. Its walls were strong, and the roof had collapsed in parts, but inside it offered shelter. Daniel and Solara slipped in quietly, closing the door behind them. Inside, they sat on the floor, catching their breath. Daniel examined Solara's wrists, still faintly bruised. He applied a salve from his medkit. "You are stronger than you know," he said. "The collar left marks, but you survived the city and the chase. That is courage." Solara's lips curved into a small smile. "And you?" she asked. "You risked your life for me. You could have stayed safe. Why did you come?" Daniel looked away, unsure of how to explain the mix of duty and feeling that drove him. "I saw a life worth saving. I could not turn away. That is all I know." For a moment, silence filled the room. Outside, the wind blew through cracks in the walls, carrying the scent of sand and stone. Then Solara spoke again, softer this time. "You are not like the others. Humans are brave, yes, but you are different. You trust without fear, and act without anger. That is rare." Daniel shook his head. "I am not different. I only follow what I believe is right. That is something anyone can do if they choose." Siluro looked at him with respect and curiosity. Then maybe your people are not as weak as my council believes? They call humans fragile, yet here you stand, facing what could destroy us both, and you do not flinch. Daniel felt a warmth in his chest, a mix of pride and humility. He did not know if he deserved her words, but he understood the meaning. They were no longer just two individuals hiding. They were symbols now, of courage and trust. As the day passed, they explored the outpost. It had small supplies left behind by its original occupants, water stored in metal containers, dried food, and some basic tools. Daniel used what he could to reinforce the weak walls and create hiding spaces. Silura helped, moving quietly and skillfully. Together, they prepared for the inevitable. By evening, the sun had sunk low, casting long shadows across the plateau. Patrol ships passed overhead, their lights searching, but none came close enough to see the outpost. Daniel and Silura rested, leaning against the stone walls. Silura spoke again, her voice calm. When I was captured, I thought my life was over. I thought no one would care enough to help. You proved me wrong. That is something I will not forget. Daniel smiled faintly. And you gave me a reason to act. I could not ignore you. Not when I saw the truth in your eyes. They sat in silence for a while, listening to the wind. Outside, the patrols would continue to search, but inside the outpost, there was a quiet sense of safety. For now, they had a moment to breathe, to prepare, and to trust in each other. Daniel realized that this journey was not just about survival. It was about something greater, the bond between two beings from different worlds, united by courage and by the choice to do what was right. Siluro looked at him once more. Whatever happens next, Daniel, I am glad you were here. Not as a hero, but as a friend. Daniel nodded. And I am glad you survived. That is enough for me. The desert night fell, stars sparkling across the sky. The council's forces were out there, hunting, but inside the small outpost, two lives had found trust and hope. They would face what came next together, stronger than before. The first light of dawn broke over the desert plateau. The wind carried a faint chill, brushing against the rocks and the outpost where Daniel and Silura had spent the night. Outside, the distant hum of patrol ships grew louder. The council had not forgotten them, and the hunt was still active. Daniel checked the scanner on his wrist. Patrols were moving in patterns, but there was a gap in the western canyon. He looked at Silura. If we move now, we can reach a safe area before they find us. Silura nodded. Lead the way. I trust you. Their journey was careful but fast. They navigated narrow rock paths and small caves, keeping low and avoiding open ground. Every step was tense. Every sound could be a signal of danger. Yet they moved with purpose, their trust in each other growing stronger with every decision. As the sun rose higher, the patrol ships began scanning more thoroughly. A drone spotted movement in the canyon and sent a signal. Engines roared as several ships descended toward the location. Daniel and Silura ducked behind a large boulder, their hearts racing. They are close, Silura whispered. Daniel looked at her. We cannot hide forever. We must make a choice. Silura's eyes glimmered with determination. Then we face them together. They moved quickly, using the canyon walls for cover. The patrol ships were above, trying to spot them, but the rocks created blind spots. Daniel pulled out a small reflective panel from his medkit. He angled it toward the sun to create a sudden glare, confusing a drone above. Sparks from the reflection flashed, making the drone hesitate and crash into a rock. Silura smiled faintly. Your tools are clever. Daniel shook his head. They are nothing. It is strategy, timing, and trust that matters most. They climbed higher into the canyon until they reached a narrow ledge overlooking the desert. From there, they could see the patrols moving below. They had gained some distance, but the council's forces were determined and relentless. Daniel turned to Solara. We need a longer-term plan. We cannot keep running forever. Solara thought for a moment. There is a hidden settlement beyond the northern ridge. Humans and aliens who disagree with the council live there. They hide, and they help those who are hunted. If we reach them, we can be safe. Daniel nodded. Then we head there. Together. The climb was difficult. Loose stones slid beneath their feet, and the canyon walls scraped against their arms. But they did not falter. They had survived far worse together, and neither wanted to give up now. Hours passed as they carefully made their way along the ridge. Finally, in the distance, they saw the faint glow of small fires and the shapes of huts. Smoke rose gently into the morning sky. It was the hidden settlement. Solara's lips curved into a relieved smile. We have made it. Daniel allowed himself a small breath of relief. For now. But the council may still come. Inside the settlement, they were greeted by cautious but friendly faces. Humans and aliens alike had come to the place seeking refuge. The leaders listened to their story, then offered food, water, and shelter. They also promised protection from the council's immediate reach. Solara knelt, taking the warmth of the small fire. Daniel sat beside her, tired but alert. For the first time in weeks, they felt a sense of safety. Solara looked at Daniel. You risked everything to save me. Not because of orders, not because of reward, but because it was right. That is rare. Daniel smiled softly. And you remind me that courage can come in many forms. Yours saved more than just yourself. It changed me too. The settlement's leaders spoke of possibilities. If Solara stayed, she could help teach others how to resist fear, how to choose hope instead of blind obedience. Daniel could continue his work as a medic, helping all who needed care, regardless of species. Together, they could build something stronger than the council's control. Days passed, and life in the settlement became steady. Solara learned from the humans, shared her knowledge of the stars, and helped organize the people. Daniel continued his work, mending injuries, teaching survival skills, and guiding those who needed support. Their bond grew quietly, built on trust, respect, and the shared experience of danger. One evening, as the sun set in shades of orange and pink, Solara and Daniel stood outside, looking over the ridge at the desert below. The council city was far in the distance, towers glinting in the fading light. Solara spoke softly. I once thought my life would end in chains. I thought no one would care. But you proved me wrong. Daniel shook his head. I only followed what I believe. But yes, together, we changed what could have been the end. They stood in silence for a moment, letting the calm of the desert fill them. Then Solara turned to Daniel. What now? Daniel looked at her, the stars beginning to shine above. Now we live. We build. We show that life is stronger than fear. That even when the council tries to control, hope and courage will survive. Solara smiled fully this time, a smile filled with gratitude and relief. Then let us begin. And so they did. The settlement grew, bringing together humans and aliens who believed in trust, courage, and cooperation. The council's reach was vast, but it could not reach the hearts of those who chose to stand together. Daniel and Solara worked side by side. They healed, taught, and guided. Each day, they reminded themselves and those around them that one act of courage could change many lives. Their story spread quietly, a tale of hope, trust, and the bond between two beings from different worlds. In the quiet nights, under the stars, Daniel and Solara sometimes spoke of the past. The fear, the danger, the choices they had made. But always, they spoke of the future. A future where life was sacred, where courage was celebrated, and where one human medic and one brave alien woman had dared to defy fear for the sake of hope.